Dear listener, welcome into Other People's Shoes, Season 17, entitled Dear. This season, we venture into emotional territories as we explore words left unsent through this intimate process of writing a letter that was never meant to reach its recipient. The raw, unfiltered authenticity that speaks volumes in these letters. These unrevealed stories, confessions, and reflections held within these letters until now are powerful. Welcome to Dear, sincerely, Other People's Shoes.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I'm Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining me today. Really excited and thrilled that you've come to sit down at our table, that you've joined us. We have a bunch of letters to open. Let me tell you, there's so many to get through, and there's so many letters still yet to be opened. Well, today we open another letter. I always think of Blue's Clues in this moment, like, look who got a letter, look who got a letter, look who got a letter. I wonder who it's from. Yes, I know I watched a lot of Blue's Clues. Listen, Adia was young at the time. I thought Steve was the coolest guy on the planet, and then that guy Joe showed up. No idea why. Oh, right. Steve went on to college, supposedly. Whatever. As in July, we started with some firecrackers. We started with some boom, maybe a little precursor, a little bit of trigger warning. I don't know what's going to happen. I never really know what's going to happen. I know two things generally will happen, and then outside of that, I don't really know the rest. But I will say today, this could be a trigger for some. So I'm going to ask you right now if in any way you have walked the road of miscarriage, if you have walked the road of perhaps maybe even abortion, if you have walked that road in any form or fashion, I would caution you right now as we begin today's episode that this could be for you a triggering moment. I would ask potentially, if you're willing, set that aside for a second. Set those feelings aside and really, if you can, even in my world, put on the headphones and maybe just sit back and hear a story and hear an account that I think is different than some. Help me welcome in my guest, hailing from the MISSISSI PPI of Mississippi. Help me welcome in my new friend, Cate. Cate, how are you today?
Hey, I'm so great. How are you?
That was quite the introduction, right?
It was kind of fantabulous. I was here for it.
So in our new house, we literally are across the street from our mailbox. We used to be in Eagle Point, which was very nice. We had a neighborhood. We had dogs and cats. We talked pre-show, about our animals. And it was a neighborhood, and it was nice, and you could wave to your neighbor on the way to the mailbox. Now I have to play Frogger across the treacherous terrain of Table Rock Road, which is a 2-lane road. People speed, okay? Let me just put it out there. People are speeding on that road, and I'm feeling like an old man. If I had a lawn, I'd be standing on it saying, get off my lawn. I'd say, get off my street. But we live in a very, very community, very country living. We're green acring. Country living is the life for us now. Welcome in our new freshly built home. For the first time, my wife and I built a home. Thanks to my brother-in-law, 2,600 square feet. It feels like you need a trolley to get to one side or the other. It's been my dream to have a train in my home, like a little model train that you could ride on, like back in the day with Silver Spoons, for those who remember that show. Sadly, she will not allow the train. So I'm going to ask you, Cate, can you help me in my train petitioning to get a electronic train to run through my house? Would you pitch that to my wife right now and join Team Neil?
Yes, and here's why. We actually just bought a brand new house in the middle of we call it the boonies, our dream house. Our rule was, because in our old house, we had stairs and we have 5 kids. Every night at bedtime, 4 of the 5 are stalling, and we'd have to traipse up and down the stairs, put them back in the bed. Everyone needs a water. Suddenly everyone needs to pee. Our rule with this house was that when we bought a new house, it would all be one level. So we have about the same as you were, right at 3,000 square feet. And so walking from one side to the other, I feel like you deserve one of those ride-on trains. Get the one you can ride on. You deserve it. You should not have to walk from one end to the other. You just shouldn't.
It's really hard too, the way our bathroom is set up. You have to actually go through our master bedroom to get to our bathroom, and then our closet is beyond that. So our closet our closet is actually basically kind of in our bathroom, but not really. It's pushed to the back. So if you're in that back closet and you call for somebody staying in the front of the house, there's no way they're hearing you. No way. Yeah. You might as well be dead to them. Absolutely. Yeah. So on to you. I'm sure people didn't come to hear about our house woes and sagas of such as this. Help us with this. What style of shoe, if we were to envision you in a pair of shoes, what might we envision you wearing?
Platform Birkenstocks.
Okay. Platform Birkenstocks.
Husband says I tend towards Spice Girl shoes.
I've seen those. I've seen the Spice Girl shoes, so I'm familiar. I grew up in that era. So Ginger Spice may have been my favorite. May have been. In those days. Followed by Baby Spice, again. No particular order. The others, could take them or leave them. So is that to make you appear to be taller? Or what's the reasoning behind it? Is it a comfort level? What is going on there?
You would think I am 5 foot. I'm 5'4.5". I'm downright average for a girl. Downright average. Just like them. Well, I'm wearing like sandals right now and they're like platformy. I was real glad when the platforming shoes came back out. I have no reasons. I don't necessarily need to be taller. I think they're a little funky and I'm a little funky and maybe that's why it's just a funky preference.
Well, I'll tell you the shoes that I have recently gotten around, and I was so anti them for a long time, but now I've kind of embraced them. I like them. It's those Hey Dude shoes.
I thought you were going to say Crocs.
No. Well, yes, that too. That too. I was a Croc hater.
My husband has a Hey Dudes obsession, but not like the traditional ones because he doesn't like the way they fit on his feet. He has the Hey Dudes, like the tennis shoes, and he loves them. And then he has the Hey Dude, they're like boots, like snow boots. We own a roofing company, and he actually wears these because he says they grip the roof really well. Of all things.
Whatever works.
And so I don't have any, but both of my boys have Hey Dudes and they love them. And I love them because I don't have to tie the shoes for them. And my husband, he probably has 5 pairs of Hey Dudes in his closet. It's a good dad shoe.
I have the Hey Dudes North Carolina version. And if you Google that, you will find out really quickly that they're white. So whoever decided to make them white, I would like to find them and maybe grab their shirt collar and politely remind them.
Still white?
No, they're more of a cream, perhaps now.
Beige.
Yeah, it's good color. Beige. Just don't know why. And then, yes, I found some North Carolina Crocs, being the Tar Heels fan that I am. And I have a running bet with my sister. The first time I wear them publicly, again, away from my house publicly, we'll say in a family setting or a dinner out or something of that nature, I have to pay her $20. I have yet to pay the $20 because I just wear them around the house and around the pool. When we talk about writing a letter, now I know for some, they have really truly struggled with this, letting you behind the curtain. People have not wanted to do this. I have been so surprised by how many people I've reached out to with a thought in my mind, like, oh, you're a perfect person. You're a great candidate. I think you have a great story. I think you would love this. And they've written back very politely, by the way. Nobody's been rude. Very politely, I've gotten a lot of people that said, no, thank you for thinking of me. No, I'm not willing to do this. I'm not prepared to do this. No, I don't know what I would say. No, Neil. Thank you, but no. And I got to be candid. When I first started, I didn't think it was going to be that hard for someone to sit down, write a letter potentially to someone for whatever reason they can't send. I thought, man, this is brilliant. This is genius. I pitched it to a couple of my friends that I trust who listen to the show regularly, who I kind of go to kind of bounce ideas off of. I even went to some podcast friends and they're like, Neil, that is genius. Like, who thought of that? I'm like, I don't know. God, I don't know. Me, who knows? All that aside, it's been a struggle to find people to do this. And so I ask you in this moment, Katie, why you? And why write your letter? And then maybe transition that into who did you write it to? So
let me start with saying, I think that one of the reasons that you might be having such a difficult time finding people to do this is because letters are so personal. I recently, probably about 6 months ago, I actually started seeing a therapist and I had said, I'm never going to do this. This is just not something that I had a million reasons why not to. And I finally found a good one to do it. And I said, okay, I'll start this out. So one of the things for the past few months that he has encouraged me to do is write letters and never send them. Say the things you need to say that don't need to be said. I think there's such a vulnerability there in writing a lot of letters. Because when I sat down after you and I had originally spoken, I actually, and the listeners don't know this, but you do, but I actually have postponed this. When I sat down to start writing, I wasn't sure what to write or who to write to. I had the typical thoughts in my brain of like, okay, write to your younger self. But I didn't have anything to say to me yet. I'm sure in life I'll get there. So I don't know that I have any wisdom to offer myself at this point. When I sat down, I probably started and couldn't make it through 3 different letters. I started with Dear Younger Self, Dear Husband, Dear God. I ended up with writer's block each time. I just told the Lord, I was like, okay, I want to do this. I've committed to do this. I don't know how to do this. when I sat down to write this letter, it just came. I have a sort of, I don't know if it's a deal with the Lord. He didn't confirm or deny his into this. It's been, it's worked so far. When I wrote my first book, which is actually not published yet, it's the first book I wrote and not one that I've published. It was a late night kind of where I was on the phone with my husband and I was out of town. I was talking to him and I was like, okay, I love you, but I need to go because now I have to write. And I don't know what I'm going to write. The Lord's telling me to hang up the phone and write. So I love you and I'll talk to you tomorrow. And it was up until 3 a.m. and it just kept flowing, and told the Lord from now on, when I sit down to write, if it's you and it's flowing, then I'm going to keep writing. But as soon as I feel like I'm putting effort in, as soon as I feel like I have something to say, then I'm going to cut it. I don't want to write things from me. I want to write things from you. That was really kind of how this letter came about. And I had postponed you because it was like, I made it through. I'm not there. I'm not willing to do this if I don't feel like the hand of the Lord is on it. My letter is addressed to miscarriage and infant loss moms. It's a road that I have walked entirely too many times. We have experienced 15 miscarriages, including a set of twins, 16 babies at various stages. Our most recent loss was at 9 weeks in March. It's very fresh when you get this far. Everything just kind of brings everything else back up. I've actually walked with other women through this as a birth and miscarriage doula for 5 years, where I walk through live births, but also loss and stillbirths with other mothers. So this was really just a culmination of really what I do now, the heart that I have for these women and the things that the Lord has been so gracious to offer me when I feel like there's really been a gap, what the church has to offer as far as grieving mothers.
Well, first off, I want to applaud you and really acknowledge what you said there. And here's why. Is in this space, we'll say, of podcasting, it has been always hard for me to find people that I feel are quality. I mean, I could find anybody I want, I'm sure. Just throw out a Facebook post and I'll get probably 2785 type of responses. And I've gotten solicited from different people from time to time, but it always seems like somebody wants to come on with an agenda when those moments happen. As politely as I try to be with folks and say, listen, my show isn't your infomercial to promote your course, your book, your whatever. It's real lives. It's real people. It's Joe Public people. We've had, quote unquote, I'll say celebrities, and I don't actively go out and pursue those. I mean, when it happens and when we get that opportunity, we jump at it. That's not what I'm after every week. I'm after the real, the raw, the authentic. And I think for you in our interaction, I saw that. I just want to affirm you in that and encourage you in that. I just think for you to allow yourself to say, listen, God's not ready yet. He hasn't spoken to me yet. Says to me there's something, again, real and authentic, a safety there for you and maybe for other ladies. I would ask you in this moment and even invite you, if you want to read your letter, if you want to read excerpts from it, I'm giving you that space to do as you choose to do with it.
I will just read the whole thing. And I'll say this to you, as many times as I've walked through this and as many times as I speak about it and write about it and stuff, there are two things that will consistently make me cry. Every time someone gets baptized, I cry like a baby. Every time somebody, like, they're walking down, I say baptized in water, or like if they're walking down the aisle to the altar to give their lives to the Lord, I'm gone. No, like I've no shot. My mascara is done. I'll have lashes all over my face. And the other time is things like this. It is so vulnerable. If I cry, I'm just going to wipe my snot and keep going. Okay. Just
fair enough. Go for it.
Okay. Dear miscarriage and infant loss mama, the things you're experiencing can only be understood by someone who has walked the rocky path before you. I wish with my whole heart that I could say that I have not, but it is a part of my story, as it is now a plot-twisting chapter in yours. The days ahead of you will be full of stumbling and falling. Some days you won't be able to breathe, and some days you'll wish that you weren't. But I need to tell you some things that no one told me, because I know that they will save your life and your faith when you would give up both just to have your baby in your arms. Let me first tell you the most important thing that someone did tell me. It's okay to tell God how you feel. In fact, it is necessary. Our limited wisdom as his creation cannot begin to fathom the ins and outs of what has happened and why. Your emotions will arise and try to take over, and they will spill out. But know this, he can take it. He can bear the brunt of your anger, the depths of your sadness, the questions you ask, and the loneliness that you feel. Tell him. Cry to him, scream at him, yell at him, and cry some more. He's not a father who expects you to bear this weight alone. So when you cast this care on him, don't be afraid to cast it loudly and with questions. Just remember when it is all done that he will still be sitting with you, holding you, grieving with you as his heart is broken with yours. Remember too that Jesus wept and he is weeping with you. But let me now tell you the things that I didn't know when I lost my babies time and time again. You need to know that this is not your fault. You didn't drink too much coffee, stress too much, or commit some grievous sin that was punished with the death of your baby. Satan will lie to you in any effort to accuse God of not being good. And while I'm telling you this, let me remind you to not let well-meaning people place the blame on God where it does not belong. John chapter 10, verse 10 says that Satan is the thief who comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus came that we may have life and have it more abundantly. Our God is not a murderer, so do not let anyone place the blame on him when we know that he is good. I want to apologize to you on behalf of the church for the deafening silence you're going to hear over the coming weeks and months. In their lack of understanding, they choose to do nothing out of fear that they will do the wrong thing. They will think of you and they will pray for you that you are well, but they are too afraid of upsetting you to call or text. They will do it out of love and concern for you, but know that they don't understand. And I know that you pray as much as I do that they will never know or never understand. Likewise, they know nothing but to blame God for your baby's death in an attempt to convince you of his sovereignty. You will hear things taken out of context, such as the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, or God must have needed another angel. And it will make you angry at God when they say it. But you must remember that they say these things because they do not understand. And they truly believe that if God did this to you, then you cannot be mad at him, and that makes it better. Most of them have never experienced the pain of loss on this scale, and once again, they are trying to help you, but they have a deep lack of understanding. Our God is not a murderer, and I'm so sorry that people will shake your faith when it's already taken such a beating. The next thing I want you to know is this: the deep pit in your stomach, the blinding pain, the brain fog, the inability to function will eventually start to lift. You'll start by seeing brief moments of clarity and even moments of joy, and you'll feel guilty for daring to steal a moment's happiness for fear that it dishonors your baby in his memory. But don't. The joy of the Lord is your strength, and the best way to honor your precious little one's life is to live yours well. Those brief moments will come more and more often, and you'll wonder if they will eventually come so much that you'll forget your baby altogether. But you won't. Every due date, every birthday, every frilly outfit you see in the store will remind you of her, and it will fall on you like a ton of bricks. You may have to graciously decline baby shower invitations for a while, and that's okay too. Just know that as you walk through the next weeks and months, that the pain you feel is not felt by you alone. Your Father in heaven is grieving with you. He sees every tear, every thought, every lonely moment, and he will walk with you through this. Finally, I'm going to tell you something that has gotten me through times in life when I felt that I could not possibly continue. I learned this from a woman named Elizabeth Elliot, who was the wife of a missionary who was killed many years ago, leaving behind his wife and their infant daughter. She said, "Sometimes life is so hard, you can only do the next thing. Whatever it is, just do the next thing. God will meet you there." She quoted an English poem that I will now leave with you. "From an old English parsonage down by the sea, there came in the twilight a message for me. Its quaint Saxon legend deeply engraven hath, as it seems to me, teaching from heaven. And on through the hours the quiet words ring like a low inspiration. Do the next thing. Many a questioning, many a fear, many a doubt hath its quieting here. Moment by moment let down from heaven, time, opportunity, guidance are given. Fear not tomorrows, child of the King. Trust them with Jesus. Do the next thing. Do it immediately. Do it with prayer. Do it reliantly, casting all care. Do it with reverence, tracing his hand who placed it before thee with earnest command. Stayed on omnipotence, safe neath his wing. Leave all resultings, and do the next thing. Looking to Jesus, ever serener, working or suffering be thy demeanor. In his dear presence, the rest of his calm. The light of his countenance be thy psalm. Strong in his faithfulness, praise and sing. And then as he beckons thee, do the next thing."
Wow. So years ago, my wife and I, some know, I think everyone knows at this point, I led off our season with my own letter. I wrote a letter to a son that I believe my wife and I would have had on our first pregnancy. There's great debate over that, by the way, still. I believe it was a son. And I will never forget this as long as I live. I was about to be on staff at the church, and an elder who I respect, mentor in my life, love the guy dearly. He's no longer with us. He's in heaven. For years, carried oxygen with him, had an oxygen tank. As I was coming up the ramp to go into church, the back way into church, he was making his way, shuffling in, and his name is Ron. And Ron kind of grabbed my arm and he said, "Hey, son." He often called me that because I'd known his granddaughter for years. And so anyway, Ron grabs my arm and he said, "Hey, son, how are you?" And this was shortly after my wife and I had found out that we were not going to be parents at that moment. And I was still kind of in a haze and in a daze and not in a very great place. Not that this excuses my actions, just to give some background and some context. And I was still questioning God, still maybe am. And Ron said to me, he said, "You know, son, I know how you feel. Carolyn and I lost a child, and I know exactly how you feel." And I looked at him with very much anger and disdain, and maybe darn near hatred. And I snapped back. "Ron, you know, I used to be a runner, Ron. In high school, I was a 3,000 meter runner. I ran the 1,500. I've ran countless races in high school. I remember coming to the finish line, Ron, gasping for air. I've swam underwater, gasping for air, coming up, breathing and praying to God that I would get air. And you carrying that oxygen tank makes me think of that. I know how you feel to struggle to have oxygen." And, you know, he grabbed my arm a little tighter after that statement. And he looks at me and he probably had the same anger and disdain and maybe even hatred. And he said, "You don't even know how I feel. You don't know what it's like to carry this around, the burden and the weight of all this. You cannot stand there and tell me you know how this feels." And I looked at him as he loosened my arm and I said, "Ron, then don't you stand there and tell me you know how I feel." And I turned around and I walked away. Here's the thing about time is I never went back and talked about that with Ron ever again. I never asked for forgiveness for my anger and hatred. I just kind of went on my way. I think he knew that I was okay and that we were okay. I think he knew it was just a bad moment for the both of us. Katie, I bring that about. The dumbest thing people can say is, "I know how you feel." I can't sit here and say that even in my situation, now granted it was 1, not 16. That's a number I can't even comprehend. And here's the other factor for me that I need some explanation on. How do you worship a God? How do you still say and sing the song that stupid Chris Tomlin wrote, "He's a good father. It's who he is. It's who he is." I'm like, bull crap. I'd use another word. I try to keep it a little bit cleaner around here.
After my 9th miscarriage, I don't know, at some point they all run together. During that time frame, they happened back to back. I was not okay. To say that I was not okay, I was ready to give it all up. A good God could not possibly allow this. It couldn't happen. I have a husband who, when I ask questions, why is this happening? What is going on? Why is this happening? If God is so good, why would this be happening? If he said it once in our 15 years of being together, he said it a million times. He just kept saying, "I don't know and I don't understand, but I do know that God is faithful." I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. This doesn't, like, how do you know? How do you know? And he was like, "I've seen it too many times in my life for it to be shaken." I was so angry. I would not read. I was so mad. I was not reading the Bible. I was like, this is not helpful to me. This jargon doesn't, like, this is just, why do we even have 70 million of these? It was months, Neil. I remember laying on my bed with my husband and I don't have a clue what he was. He's reading something. He's always reading something. And I had opened and laid in front of me the Bible, the writings of Josephus, the book of Enoch. Like, I was just, every historical context that I could find, I was just reading just to see, like, okay, I was really, if I'm being honest, I was probably trying to prove the Bible wrong. Like, none of this matches up, except for it does, primarily, not entirely the book of Enoch. For historical context, you can't disprove the Bible. In all of that, it was really, I think the Lord used that in my trying to disprove it to myself, one, as a way to just get me reading it. I remember laying on the bed and I closed all of them and I threw them off the side of our bed. And I remember them making such a loud noise and I just laid face down in the bed and sobbed. Life did not make sense. And I remember laying there, ugly crying, all of the books off of the bed. And I lay there face down. And I have nothing. My brain does not often quiet. There's too much going on. I just lay there and I remember my brain just being like completely empty. And the Lord just said to me, you can either ask why and start with your experiences and list all of the reasons that I may or may not be good and come to the end where you get to make the decision based on your experiences of am I good or am I not? Or you can start with what my word says, which is that you know that I am good, and work from there. And then you get to decide, do your experiences align with that or do they not? And at the end of it, whether they do or they do not, you started from the truth of I am good. The way that I explained this to myself really is this. God created a perfect world. Sin entered the picture. The world became a little bit less perfect, but there was, and there is in the spirit, there is a perfect realm. Our experiences on this earth are tainted by sin. Just the world is tainted by sin. But we have to remember our experiences in a world tainted by sin are not his perfect will. And for me to be able to see that and recognize that this life that I live where crap happens, oh my goodness, it's such a dumbed down and vile thing to say when you're talking about things this heavy. Crap happens. We live in an alternate reality. We live in a world that he never intended us to live in. And yet he still chooses mercy and goodness and kindness. And I think for me, I think about it this way. People say all the time, there's a song, one of my favorite songs, I can't wait for eternity. Okay. Sing a song, they're already singing, holy, holy, holy are you, Lord. It's one of the only true worship songs being written right now. Okay. And I could go off on that, but I won't. For us, we think, okay, here we are living on earth. And then when we die, we're moving into eternity. But I think that we forget that our souls are eternal and we already live in eternity. And from the perspective of a holy God who already lives in eternity, he sees us as eternal. My babies, whether I held them or he held them, their souls are eternal. They're not gone. Their physical location is different. Would I rather their physical location be here 1,000,000 times a day? 1,000,000 times a day. That grief and that desire for them to be with me does not change the fact that a holy God sits on the side of eternity and sees the things that we cannot see. And so sitting here in my finite and human wisdom, only being able to see what we call this side of eternity, which is fleeting and just a moment, actively think sometimes, who am I to sit here, the creation, and question him for things that I cannot see? If I could see everything, if I knew everything, if I could possibly explain this to you, and I can't, and I'm not gonna pretend that I know and understand why I have 16 babies who died. And I think a lot of people want you to explain it to them, but the truth is that we can't. If we could, we would be God, or we would be like God. And honestly, a woman wanting to be like God is kind of how we got in this place in the first place. And I'm not interested in rejoining that.
Yes, that is true.
Okay. I think that's the best answer that I have, is that I actively think a lot about the fact that we live in an alternate reality. And for me, I stopped asking why a long time ago. And I started just reminding myself and going back to the word and putting that back in me. Because the truth is that when we go and we question his sovereignty and we question his goodness and stuff, what we're doing it's Satan is the accuser of the brethren, but Satan is also the accuser of God. And he doesn't just come to us and say, you did this. He also comes to us and said, God would did this. God would never. God this. God this. He can convince you to believe the things that he says about God. Why does he need to accuse you of anything?
It's powerful stuff. I've never met her. She is on my list of people I would like to just have a cup of coffee with and ask some questions of. Her name is Natalie Grant. I don't know if you've heard of her. She has this awful song. Maybe you've heard of it. Again, speaking of songs, the song's called Held. For copyright reasons, I can't play it, but I can read the lyrics because there's nothing that stops that. A couple of lines in the song that I wanted to go over with you and get your thoughts on it. It says, "This is what it means to be held, how it feels when the sacred is torn from your life and you survive. This is what it means to be loved and to know that the promise when everything fell, we held." What do you think of that?
I love Natalie Grant, by the way.
I just want to, I thought she wrote it. She didn't, by the way. But I just want to get 5 minutes with her. Somebody put that song in my pathway when my wife and I were on our journey. I hated it, to be honest with you. Hated it. Still did. Yes. Went and listened to it today prior to us recording. And I was like, why am I doing this to myself? I hate this song. No, I'm kidding. It's a gorgeous song. I hate it from the standpoint that it brings about those feelings again. It brings about that moment in my life where it was so dark. You talked about this already, and I want to get your thoughts on Natalie and the song. I'm not going to forget this. You talked about the church, in a sense, being very silent and being very quiet, and I want to get to that too. So Natalie, then the church, if we can.
Read the lyrics to me again.
This is what it means to be held, how it feels when the sacred is torn from your life and you survive. This is what it means to be loved and to know that the promise when everything fell, we held.
There's a passage in the Bible that talks about the fathers of the faith, and which it's very interesting to me. Job is listed amongst those great men of faith. And at the end of it, it talks about how these men died having not beheld the promise. The great, what we call the fathers of faith of the Bible. The promise was Jesus. There were covenants cut with Abraham and with Moses, and those covenants, they were in part able to partake in and to behold, but they were never able to see the fullness of that, which was Jesus. I think there's something to be said about the faith that remains when you have no or don't have many experiences to support it. Very many things that you see with your eyes to support it, and yet it's maintained.
So the church being silent, of all the places that should be the most loud, of all the places that should be amplified, using, again, audio technical terms, of all the places to have a microphone in front of them, a hospital and a haven, some have called it, why are they the most silent?
Bad theology.
Is that it? Is that in your mind? That's it? It's bad theology?
To say bad theology is an oversimplification, but I think it is a very broad generalization. The church is so separated right now, okay? Like, you have people like me who are called many, many names, okay? People who don't understand what I believe would probably call me hold on, I know these words.
Would a heretic come to mind?
Oh, yeah, okay. That's a good one. And so you have this polarized church where you have on one side, you have, when I was a kid, we called it spirit-filled, the more charismatic, leaning more toward the Pentecostal side, non-cessationists, basically, okay? These are broad oversimplifications, okay? People can come try and hang me if they want to, but I don't care. You have this on one side, and then you have more of the Calvinist, cessationist kind of arena on the other. And so you have this broad gap in the middle, but they both have the same issues for different reasons. So you have on the more charismatic side, the more, feelingsy side, I guess is what we would call it. You have these people who, in a lot of ways, because of bad theology, refuse to ever admit that anything is wrong. God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. And that is 100% true. That is Christianese, and it covers and it doesn't allow for grief. It doesn't allow for grief. It doesn't allow questioning. It doesn't allow for anyone to say, I'm not okay. And what even is the purpose of the church if no one can come in and say, I'm not okay? And then on the broad other end of the spectrum, same problem, different reasons. You have, I think, in my experience, I've seen more of the whole blaming God for taking the baby, and so there's more, the silence is just different on both sides, still silent. And it's because we're not allowed as Christians to say, come into this culture of Christianity. It's more Christian culture, not really kingdom culture. People are like, yeah, everything is great, or no, everything is terrible, but God's still good. And neither one of those allows, one side doesn't allow for grief. The other side doesn't allow for any goodness at all. So you end up either stuck because you're unable to grieve and no one allowed you to grieve, or you're stuck because no one allows you to come out of that grief. And the silence that people in the church, in our culture, it's in like our general culture, but it's in the Christian culture as well, where it has spilled over, where people don't know what to do with grief because grief makes people uncomfortable. When people get uncomfortable, they retreat. In the church, when people don't know what to say, they either say the wrong thing just out of diarrhea of the mouth. They're so afraid to trigger you or cause pain that they just don't do anything. And they're just both incredibly hurtful.
That's quite the predicament. I just don't know what to say in those moments when I run up against it, whether it be a friend or maybe a coworker. Yeah. I don't know what to say. I definitely don't want to say I know how you feel. I try never to ever say that, no matter the situation, just because it's not accurate and it's stupid. I know how I feel, and I've led with that. Well, hey, when I went through something similar, this is how I felt. I have an active imagination. I've been guilty of painting pictures. Well, now go draw. And I'm like, yeah, not that guy. I'm not Picasso by no means. I have a very vivid imagination, I guess is a good way to say it. I'm envisioning you as you're talking about these 16 miscarriages, kissing the little toes and eating them up. Babies are precious. They just are. Some of them are noisy. Some of them poop a lot. Some of them are just cranky. My wife and I, as I already told you, we bought a house, bought new stuff for the house. One of the things that my wife was adamant about us getting was this 12-person table. I was really excited about it till I saw it. And when it's just her and I at home, by the way, by ourselves, we sit at opposite ends sometimes just to be fun.
Like the king and queen.
She is Elizabeth, so she is the queen, as I tell her quite often. You are the queen of the house. Queen of the house, but it was kind of fun staring so far away from each other. We only did it a couple of times. In that, I can envision these 16 kids around the table and you and your husband there and having a meal with these kiddos. Have you ever allowed your imagination to go there, or am I just a crazy guy from Oregon obsessed with North Carolina imagining too many weird things?
I'll say yes, but I'll say differently. So kind of no. My husband and I have this thing where we're like, we'll take as many babies as the Lord will give us. That's what we've always said. We've been married. I got married 6 weeks after I turned 18. We've been married for 15 years now. Well, I don't know. That's math. 14, 15, something like that. We've always said we'll take as many as the Lord will give us. Here we are on the tail end of 16 miscarriages. We have 5 in our house, who the baby is 2, and our oldest that we adopted is 19. So we have this crazy widespread that is exhausting in so many different ways. It's really, really beautiful as well. And I think in my heart of hearts, I know that I probably would not have had 16 children. But I do think frequently about, I've started 1 million books and I've not finished them. And I've told you kind of why that is with the beginning the books and if the Lord's not writing it, I don't want it. The title of one that actually just keeps coming now. The title of it is A Chorus in Heaven. And it's because I saw something, I don't know if I read it or heard it or dreamt it. I don't know. I probably read, I'm not creative like that. I probably read it or saw a meme or something on Facebook. It just said something to the effect of, can you imagine walking through the pearly gates? And can you imagine the chorus of mama that you're going to get to hear when you walk in? I've never really imagined 17 bajillion, 7-11 kids, around the dinner table. But I frequently think about the chorus in heaven and that the 16 yelling, because we all know that they yell, mama, 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 mama. I think about that frequently. And then I look at the ones that I have who are hollering about gum and stuff in the car. Think about it when I hear them, because they're all talking at once and they all need something all the time. Even the big ones, everyone is, mom, 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 mom. And sometimes when I'm driving down the road, I hear them all they just need something. And 90% of the time, I'm like, what do you need? I just gave you something. But then that 10% of the time, sometimes I hear it and the Lord just reminds me, this is only 5, but there are 16 waiting. Yes, but no.
I just want to again say, Katie, thank you. I wonder though about a lady or maybe even a husband or maybe both who would hear you, who would say, cool, that's great for her that she's found healing. Okay, that's awesome for her. She's even found God. Hooray. High five. Gold star on the calendar next to her name. What would you say to her? Again, I don't know who the her is, but I have a few on my mind. I don't know where my friend may be in the journey. What would be your PS to your letter to those moms, to those ladies who would say, am I ever going to get over this?
I would say that our God is a gentleman. I would say that if right now you've thrown the books off of the bed and you're face down and you're just wishing that something logical would come in and prove that everything you've ever known was wrong, that would make more sense. I would say when you get past it, and you will, He will be waiting and he won't be angry. Time moves on. Sometimes we stay stuck, but eventually is so dependent on each woman is so different. You're eventually maybe weeks, maybe years. When you are unstuck, he's not going to be angry and he's not going to throw in your face, well, you questioned this and you tried to disprove me and you this and you that. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He's waiting. He knows he is on the other side of eternity, but he created you and he knows that you're not.
I love that. Katie, before we let you go, I want to give you an opportunity to maybe just share, if somebody wants to have a conversation outside of our conversation today, how can they do that? What's the best way they can reach you if they have questions? Maybe they themselves, again, have walked this road and they're maybe at the beginning of it, middle of it, but I have a sneaking suspicion there's some ladies out there that may be in this journey, or maybe know of a sister, of an aunt, of a so-and-so, of a nemesis, maybe even.
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. It's the Christian Miscarriage Co. like company. You can email birth with Cate, BIRTH, with Cate, CATE, @gmail.com. My book is available on Amazon. If it's something that you want to send out as a gift, it's called Words I Could Not Say, Musings of a Miscarriage Mama. And it is literally just a compilation of things that I had written and swiped right on in my phone and forgot about for years each time I was going through a miscarriage. And then the Lord brought it to my remembrance and told me, publish it because other women are feeling this way. So that's available on Amazon, Words I Could Not Say, Musings of a Miscarriage Mama. But you can email me. I monitor my own stuff. I'm not some celebrity. I'm not big time. If you reach out, you will get me. I don't charge anything to walk with people through this. This is not something we can afford for women to be alone in.
I love that a lot. I love your honesty. I love your rawness. Just sharing what you shared today. I think there's so many ladies that need to hear what you truly had to say today. So again, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate the time you gave us.
Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Well, guys and gals, kids and campers alike, I'm not crying. You're crying. Stop it. Wait, we shouldn't maybe say that. That's the problem, right? We have this thing in our home group. That's the thing we do at church. We meet every week in this small group type thing that we have a rule, actually, a guideline, I should say, not a rule, but a guideline. If somebody's crying, you cannot hand them a box of tissues. You cannot touch them or put your hands on them in any form or fashion. We're supposed to let them cry. To quote Hootie and the Blowfish, let her cry. So maybe today is your let her cry moment. Okay? You can cry. You can be mad, you can be pissed, you can be all the things. But what's the next thing you need to do after that? What's your next thing? What is it? I don't know how you feel. I don't know what you heard. I wonder what it will be your next thing. Will you answer that question for me this week and let me know what your answer is? What's your next thing? You can let us know at opspodcast.com. It's a great place to let us know. There's a connections page there. You can let us know on the socials at OPS Podcast Show on our Facebook, Instagram, and X. Come to the home stretch of this season. I do want to say I dedicate this episode to a very special friend. And I'm really sorry. I really am sorry. But I want you to know there's hope because there's a next time. See you next week. And don't forget, as we go, remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. I'm Neil Matthews. Stay tuned till next week as we walk in other people's shoes.